EVO.
This series contains adult language and depictions of graphic violence. Listener discretion is advised.
So, Jeff, you ever feel cursed before?
Yeah, most of the time. You?
No, well, is it bad luck or is it a curse? That's the question.
Right, and then there's superstitions that go along with the curses, like...
Yeah, I think it's different than a curse. I don't think that Boston Red Sox fans consider it superstitious.
No, that's true.
You know what I mean? They feel like their team was cursed.
That's true. Well, have you ever... Sorry, what'd you say?
No, I mean, I used to remember we were watching a game with Sal and he was making bagels and the Dolphins scored, so we made him keep making bagels. That's superstition.
What about stuff that people think is cursed? Like, have you ever owned anything that you thought brought bad luck or was cursed?
No. I mean, I thought a car was cursed before.
Well, I'm like the least superstitious guy in the world because I used to throw salt over my left shoulder. And one day I said, I'm not going to do it next time I spill salt. So I was in my office and I had some salt on my desk and I knocked it over and I went, I'm not picking it up. Later that day, I got the biggest bonus check I've ever seen in my entire career.
So I guess you stopped throwing salt over your shoulder.
Yeah, I did. And yet I've had things that I've put out on the street, little objects I put out on the street because I thought they were bringing me bad luck. It's all really stupid.
Well, so why are we talking about curses today?
Well, we're not talking about just any curses. We're talking about some of the most legendarily cursed objects in all of human history.
Hi, I'm Bruce.
And I'm Jeff. Welcome to Taboo Treasures, a weekly podcast that explores the human obsession with gathering and collecting not just objects of value, but objects of extreme rarity and infamy.
Today's episode, Curses, Curses, Curses. So before we get into curses...
Cursing, cussing, swearing, and all I could think of was shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits.
So that was George Carlin in 1972 when he famously called out the 7 words you can't say on TV and what a big deal we make about them. Some people call them curse or swear words, and they became interchangeable. But in a minute, we'll explain how they started out as very different things. First, to give you an idea of how far we've come in 52 years, of the 7 words in Carlin's list that you couldn't say on TV, now you still can't say any of them on TV. I guess we haven't gone too far.
At least some of us can't. We want to be clear now. We're going to speak for a moment about Donald Trump, but the conversation is not partisan. It's about language and society. And we'd be remiss if we didn't mention something that might be seen as a marker in the culture of language in America.
Yeah, over the years, there's been a few presidents that have been caught on hot mics calling people sons of bitches or assholes and other things that you really can't say on TV. But before Trump, no one could ever possibly imagine that a sitting president would use the language he has, much less intentionally so in print and on video. Here's a few. He said Pete Buttigieg had a good line of bullshit. He called people fucking liars and news articles fucking jokes. He used the term shithole countries, referring to, who was he talking about then?
Haiti and Africa, like pretty much every country in Africa.
Yeah. Referred to the vice president as a shitty vice president. He was. He called his opponents fucking disasters, fucking losers, and his administration still supports and defends him saying things that his mother would have washed his mouth out with soap for saying at the dinner table 70 years ago.
And with discourse on its ugly social media-fueled downward spiral, it'll be interesting to see what part of the increasing acceptability of once forbidden language plays going forward. So how did it all begin? Well, cursing and swearing used to be more distinct from each other. Going back thousands of years to the Ten Commandments and the crotchety old God of the Old Testament, taking the Lord's name in vain was considered swearing, the original swear. For example, you couldn't say, "Oh, for God's sake," but you could say, "Praise God." One would get you killed, the other would get you, well, nothing.
So cursing as a foul language didn't really show up until because of what?
Religion.
In the Bible. Thanks, religion. Fart is a funny word, and farts are funny. There's never been, and there will never be, a fart in a movie that wasn't funny. Farts have been funny for over 2,000 years, and they will be funny until the last animal on Earth farts its last fart. But don't take our word for it. I don't know.
Okay, the way you're laughing now is the way you're going to laugh every single time you hear that sound for the rest of your life. But farts aren't just funny, they're also part of foul language history. They're older examples, but foul language as we know it really came into its own in the 11th century with the use of the word fart, making it the oldest known rude word. This was around the same time that words like arse, shit, and some other handy words showed up in a cursing context.
Yeah, the word shit was first coined as an abbreviation. Manure had a value as a fertilizer, but when it was transported across the ocean, it could get wet, which made it off-gas methane, which is a highly flammable gas that could cause massive explosions at sea. In order to keep it dry, it was stored in racks near the ceiling, and the boxes were marked Ship High in Transit, or SHIT, and that's how the word came to be. It's pretty interesting, except it's not true. In other words, it was what?
Bullshit.
Yeah.
Shit first appeared in a medical textbook in the 12th century as a reference to diarrhea. So in around 1335, it made the OED as a curse word to describe someone whose behavior was obnoxious. I'd say it's held up pretty well. It's believed that the word fuck was first used to describe fucking. That's it.
Yeah, there's that thing about fornication under the consent of the king. You
Right.
ever heard that?
Right.
Or for unlawful carnal knowledge.
That was the one.
What fuck meant, but
Which is what fuck means.
yeah, but the word came before those sayings.
Right.
Yeah, so that's bullshit too. Some of the curse words have had more interesting origins, but not that interesting. So rather than to go into historical word weeds, we want to talk about what could arguably be the greatest and most misunderstood word in the English language. Cunt. Its history is disputed, but it first showed up in the 14th century as a word for female genitalia, or mean women.
It's weird, too, because it doesn't seem quite fair that the words become so reprehensible to Americans when, male genitalia are practically celebrated. The penis even has human nicknames like Dick or Johnson, and people are amused by these little pet nicknames. When you say cunt, you'd better duck.
Yeah. I have a story. I was recording an Israeli drummer on a session, and she was telling us a story because the word cunt came up, right? And I guess in Israeli, a rim shot, it's called a cunt. And so she was in her class in university or whatever, and I guess
Here in America?
No, it was in Israel. Or no, he was an Israeli teacher in America, so that's why it was also weird. And he's up there, and he stops the class, and he looks at her, and he goes, "Hit the cunt a little harder." And the class didn't know what the fuck was going on. So speaking of the word cunt, I got my friend Pete Molinari here, who's an amazing singer-songwriter that I've been lucky enough to work with. He's got music on all the platforms, yes?
I'm not much of a platform kind of person.
Platform shoes.
Platform shoes, yeah.
Yes. But we want you to explain to our audience
the difference between the word cunt, as it's used in the UK, and the word cunt it's used in the States.
I don't hear it that much in the States. Now I think they're using it more,
right.
right? But in England, it was kind of always just a slang kind of word. I'm sure even if you went back to the Beatles and John Lennon and all of that stuff.
They could use it affectionately too, right?
Yeah. Like in England, there's this tongue-in-cheek humour, which goes back to Peter Sellers and all of those guys, the Goons, and they'll use that kind of term, cunt, in more of a kind of cheeky
Right.
way. Whereas if you hear Liam Gallagher or someone, it's more like a football kind of, there's a bit more aggression to it, right?
So
it's kind of like...
there's a difference between a cheeky cunt and a football cunt.
Yeah, you can be really cheeky, which I think Peter Sellers was, and John Lennon, and that. It's a dark word in a way. Obviously, it's not like a pleasant word, but the way some people use it is kind of, I wouldn't necessarily say charming, but I would say it can be cheeky. Here, I think girls use it in a bit more of like, there's a bit of hate.
Oh, it's
in
bad when a woman
It's
uses
more
it.
like a kind of she's a cunt, you know.
Yeah. Sure.
But in England, it can be used in an aggressive way, but a lot of the time, how I've heard it used is "you stupid cunt,"
Right.
which is kind of like humorous.
Right. Well, thanks,
Yeah.
man. We got a lot of information on the word cunt.
Swearing generally refers to using offensive or profane language, often as an expression of anger or frustration. Swearing might involve using taboo words or phrases, and it can include saying damn or shit.
Cursing can involve invoking a curse or wishing harm on someone or something. May include a phrase like, "May you be cursed," or "I curse you." It can also refer to using offensive language in general, similar to swearing. The average person swears quite a bit. We use swear words about as much as pronouns like we, our, and ourselves. The typical range goes from 0 to about 3% of words in a day. 3% would be Eddie Murphy.
And kids often learn 4-letter words before they even learn the alphabet. By the age of 2, most children know at least one swear word. You can see the scientific evidence for this on YouTube.
Fuck. Fuck it. Fuck. Fuck. Fucking idiot. Fuck. S-O. Fuck you now. Fuck off. Fuck.
Swearing can affect your body. Hearing and saying swear words actually can change the skin's conductance response, which basically means it can make your palms sweat. One study found that swearing helps with pain. For example, if you put your hand in a bucket of ice water, you can keep it in there longer if you say shit rather than shoot. That's pretty interesting.
That is. And this one's totally random. There's a resource called Word Tips that analyzed 1.7 million geotagged tweets to establish where residents of English-speaking countries swore the most. And here's their top 10. Remember, this is the average number of curse words just used in tweets per day. It doesn't count anywhere near all the curse words. So Michigan, New Jersey, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Mississippi were pretty much tied with about 45 curse words per day each.
And then Ohio and Virginia is about 47 curse words per day. Georgia is 57 curse words per day. Louisiana is 61, and topping the list by a lot, which makes about as much sense as the rest of this weird list, is Maryland, tweeting a whopping average 66 curse words per day.
This is pretty cool. So there's some words in English that sound, if you pronounce them in other languages, they sound dirty, but they're not. And this is an actual thing with a name. It's called sordophones, which literally means dirty-sounding words. Here are a few good ones pronounced as they would be in each language. Our words for lull in Dutch and pik in Norwegian mean penis, and our word for cookie in Hungarian is more specific. It means small penis.
Here's a couple more words that mean dick or penis. Bit or beat in French means cock. Car in Albanian means penis. But here we go. Mushy in German means pussy. Cut in Dutch, it means cunt. And here's my favorite. Shabby, said with a Chinese pronunciation, which we're not going to do, means stupid cunt.
And now we're going to do some ban words. There's a list of more than 250 words and phrases that are no longer considered acceptable by the Trump administration. And they're actually being scrubbed from government websites and documents. This doesn't even begin to scratch the surface, but it'll give you a sense of how dangerous and weird it is.
Yeah, so here we go. Here's about 20 of them. Abortion, makes sense. Activism, autism. Black, belong, really. Biologically male, biologically female. All right. Clean energy, that one makes sense. They don't want to talk about that. Climate crisis, the same. Community and diverse.
Community? It's just wild. Discrimination, equality, you can't say measles, mental health, Native American, minorities, immigrants, ideology, oppression, and then a little reefer madness. You're not allowed to say the word marijuana.
In the year 2025, yeah.
And now we turn our attention to the kind of cursing that isn't just for mean girls and U.S. presidents.
First of all, what is a curse? A curse is generally something you'd say to invoke supernatural power to bring about harm or punishment. They can take lots of forms, for example, verbal, written, or symbolic gestures. Curses are generally revenge-based.
For example, verbal curses usually come along with rituals. Cursing someone is called an imprecation. Hexes and jinxes can be verbal too, but typically they're curses intended to cause bad luck or misfortune, particularly in folk magic.
Then there are family curses. These curses target entire families. The infamous curse of the pharaohs is a classic example. We have love curses. We've all used them from time to time. What? Is it wrong? These are the curses that force someone to love another person, and they can involve rituals or objects. But what about the psychological impact of a curse? The belief in curses can have significant psychological effects on individuals and communities. Even when the curses are perceived as superstition, their emotional weight can influence behavior and mental health.
We talked a little about sports curses earlier, but the biggest and best one is the curse of the Bambino. It claims that the Boston Red Sox were cursed after selling Babe Ruth to the New York Yankees in 1919 for $100,000.
Yeah, the owner of the Red Sox sold Babe Ruth to put on a Broadway play, believe it or not. And it led to the Red Sox crazy lack of championships from 1918 to 2004, while the Yankees became the most successful franchise. The superstition gained even more traction after the Red Sox heartbreaking loss in Game 7 of the 1986 World Series.
Little roller up along first, behind the bag, it gets through Buckner. Here comes Knight, and the Mets win it.
The Sox first baseman, Bill Buckner, let the ball go through his legs and cost them the championship. But they did finally win one in 2004.
Belief in curses has been deeply ingrained in human history and culture across the world for centuries. In ancient civilizations like Egypt, Greece, and Rome, curses were inscribed on tablets or objects. They were believed to have supernatural powers and usually were about personal vengeance or self-protection. Sometimes there were little things like cursing a neighbor's cows to not produce milk, but sometimes they would like curse horses to develop a limp. Who curses a fucking horse?
Somebody that's racing against it, I guess. We don't have time for all the individual curses, so we're going to do some religious ones because there's no one better at fucking up lives with curses than good old God. The curse of Adam and Eve. Original sin, original curse. God tells Eve not to eat the apple, then conveniently provides a snake to tempt Eve to eat the apple. She eats the apple and they're tossed out of the Garden of Eden. She gets to experience the pain of childbirth, and he gets to learn about back-breaking work.
The moral of the story, of course, is women are responsible for everything bad that's ever happened. The curse of the serpent was the one where God makes a snake, tells it to tempt Eve, then curses the snake for tempting Eve. Okay. Then, of course, the curse on Lot's wife, everybody's favorite thing that definitely happened. So there's this city called Sodom that God destroyed by, his usual fire and brimstone. And an angel tells Lot's wife not to look at it. But when she does, God turns her into a pillar of salt. Proportional punishment was apparently invented several centuries later.
If you could put a curse on someone, what would it be?
We'd love to know, so please email us at tabootreasures@evocreative.com or message us at Taboo Treasures on Instagram and TikTok.
The fear of witches and sorcerers casting curses has gotten more innocent women killed than analogies we prefer not to make. The witches were burned at the stake in Europe, except they were just innocent women who were horribly murdered by religious cunts. There's that word again. Yeah. The Salem witch trials are another fine example of how stupid and tragic religion can be at its worst.
Yeah, you probably heard this one. Some of these women were bound and lowered into rivers in buckets. If they floated, they were witches, and if they drowned, they were innocent. Except that's just another bit of bullshit lore that never happened. But innocent women were hung or tortured, and they did die in prison.
Lots of people still believe in curses, and social media has led to a new form of curses like the internet curse. Our fascination with curses and the supernatural is a cottage industry in films, literature, and art. Speaking of which, if you thought we were going to talk some movies and curses, you were right. But if you thought we were going to talk about the curses in movies, you were wrong. Here are a few movies that are said to be cursed themselves because of terrible things that happened to the actors during or after filming. Some of them are compelling enough to believe, but no. Okay, in 1976, the movie The Omen, Gregory Peck and his screenwriters were on separate flights to the UK that were both hit by lightning. All right. Dogs hired for the film attacked their trainers.
Okay.
The director's hotel was bombed by the IRA, and he was hit by a car. Well, that's fucking bad luck.
That's a good one.
On the first day of shooting, several crew members were in a head-on collision on their way to the set. After shooting, a crew member and his assistant were in a car crash that killed the assistant. That sucks.
Yeah.
Gregory Peck also canceled a flight that crashed and killed everyone on board, but he wasn't on it. So how was he cursed?
The next one was Maximum Overdrive in 1986. This is a lesser-known Stephen King movie, but it's pretty awesome. The director of photography lost his right eye with an out-of-control lawnmower hit a wooden support, which is pretty random. An ice cream truck stunt went wrong and nearly killed a cameraman, and a hurricane tore through the set, which is, pretty random.
In 1983, an accident occurred on the set of The Twilight Zone. It was so gruesome and tragic that it prompted major changes in regulations for production.
The scene for a movie version of Twilight Zone attempted to recreate the terror and the carnage of the hell that was Vietnam. And then, as the crew watched in horror early this morning, the make-believe dissolved.
In the cursed scene, a helicopter crashed into Vic Morrow and 2 children, killing them instantly. Sorry, that's just bad helicopter piloting, not a curse.
The son of late martial arts star Bruce Lee has died. 27-year-old Brandon Lee was killed during a movie set accident today.
Yeah, The Crow is the one where, of course, Brandon Lee was tragically killed when he was shot in the stomach by a fragment from an improperly cleared gun. But there were also tons of pretty bad coincidental accidents. On the first day, a crew member was severely electrocuted and burned in an accident involving a cherry picker. Those are the lifts with the buckets that you go up to adjust lights with. A stunt actor fell through a set piece and broke several ribs. A hurricane ripped through the set, another hurricane, and a crew member had a screwdriver stabbed through his hand. And the crew called it the Curse of the Crow.
I bet you Bruce Lee's wife thinks she's cursed losing her husband and Brandon, her son.
And so young, both of them.
Yeah. The skeletons in Poltergeist were real because the plastic ones are too expensive. So lots of conspiracy theories came from what they called a death curse. Actress Dominique Dunn, the oldest daughter in the film, was strangled the year the film was released.
Ugh.
I know. Heather O'Rourke died at only 12 years old right before the release of the third film. There was a death from stomach cancer, one from transplant complications, and one murder. Okay, maybe this one was cursed.
Yeah. The Exorcist is really bad. It was pretty much the first of his kind, which I don't. Anybody who was old enough to see it when it came out, it was absolutely terrifying. And there aren't a lot of details, but there are reportedly 9 deaths associated with it, including Vasiliki Malioris and Jack McGowan, 2 of the actors. A cameraman had a stillborn child. Ellen Burstyn permanently damaged her spine in a faulty harness accident, and a mysterious fire burned down the set. This is really creepy. While they were filming, Jason Miller, who played Father Karras, was approached on the street by a priest, and the priest handed him this medallion and warned him of the devil's retribution. Yikes.
Now we're going to talk a little bit about cursed families.
Here is Jessica Savage, NBC News.
Princess Grace. Grace Kelly died today at age 52. The cause, injuries resulting from her car accident yesterday. She left a highly acclaimed acting career in 1956 to marry Prince Rainier of Monaco.
The Grimaldis became the lords of Monaco in the 15th century, around 200 years after they were supposedly cursed by a witch in retaliation for acts committed by Lord Rainier I. Rainier allegedly attacked a young girl who later became a witch and used her talents to curse every single Grimaldi to never find matrimonial bliss. It seems to have worked. For centuries, the family has been plagued by miserable marriages down through the centuries.
And not only that, in modern times, Princess Grace, Rainier II's wife, died in a car accident. And while her daughter Stephanie survived, she just went through a whole string of broken marriages and bad relationships. And then Rainier's other daughter, Carolyn, was also unlucky like that. She divorced once, lost her second husband to a boating accident.
Well, this is not a boat accident.
And then she married again to an abusive guy.
We both have little stories about these Grace Kelly's kids, don't we?
Yes, except I can't remember which one.
Well, we figured it out. It was Caroline.
It was Caroline, yeah.
My mom was A&Ring Princess Stephanie's record, and there is a photo in my wife's possession of my mom, Princess Stephanie, and my mom's best friend. Well, Princess Stephanie has a dildo to her ear, like talking through a phone.
That's so fucking great. And I told you my Carolyn story. I don't know. It was so many years ago that I don't remember what happened, but she and her bodyguard were at my parents' house when I must have been 23. And I ended up going out with her that night with her bodyguard. And I said, what do you want to do? And she took me this is in Miami. She took me to a friend's house. We played poker. She was cool as shit.
Another cursed relationship.
Another cursed relationship. Only that one was my fault.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's the Rockefellers. Apparently, even the most insane amount of money can't save a dynasty from bad luck. In 1951, John D. Rockefeller's great niece killed her 2 children and committed suicide soon after. 10 years later, Michael Rockefeller mysteriously died in New Guinea, with rumors circulating that he was killed and eaten by cannibals. John Rockefeller III was killed in a car accident in 1978, and in 2014, Richard Rockefeller died when he crashed his plane. Another bad pilot.
Yeah, that's not a curse. That's flying bad.
Yeah.
The man who left an indelible impression on English literature is dead. Ernest Hemingway died of a self-inflicted wound at his Ketchum, Idaho home while handling a shotgun as he prepared for a hunting trip.
Later evidence showed that Hemingway suffered from a disease that deteriorates the mind. He wasn't the only person in the Hemingway family to kill himself either. His father, his brother, his sister, and his granddaughter all have committed suicide, totaling 5 suicides across 4 generations. That's kind of curse.
Yeah, it is. The Getty family hasn't had it much easier. J. Paul Getty was the richest man in America in 1957, and in 58, his son Timmy died from a brain tumor at 12. His daughter-in-law died of a heroin overdose in 71. His son, John Paul Getty III, was kidnapped in 73, and after his grandfather refused to pay the ransom, the kidnappers cut off his ear and delivered it to a newspaper. I actually knew him a little bit in the early 80s, and he was sort of an alcoholic, and he had drug addict. But he really wasn't a bad kid. It's like he really was cursed. In 81, he had a terrible overdose, and finally he died in 2011.
That sounds like a curse to me.
Yeah, I'm going with curse.
Yeah.
Kennedys are definitely cursed.
Yeah.
JFK and Robert are the most famous ones, but they're not the only ones. Joseph Kennedy Jr. was killed in World War II. Kathleen died in another plane crash, in 1948. And Rosemary Kennedy was left permanently disabled after a lobotomy. Ugh. In 55 and 56, Jacqueline Kennedy suffered a miscarriage and a stillborn. And in 63, the same year JFK was assassinated, his son Patrick died 39 hours after birth. And David, Michael, John Jr., and Mary have all prematurely died from various circumstances since 1984.
Now on to the subjects of our podcast today. Cursed things. Crying Boy is a mass-produced print of a painting by an Italian painter named Giovanni Bragolin, who died in 1981. He painted a picture called The Crying Boy that was mass-produced from the 1950s onward. It's cursed to cause fires wherever it hangs, and it stays undamaged after the fires. It all started on September 5th, 1985, when the British tabloid The Sun reported that a Yorkshire fireman named Peter Hall claimed that fire departments across the north of England had found examples of the same picture in fire after fire that was never solved, and they were never damaged.
By the end of November, word about it got so nuts that The Sun responded to all these readers who had been sending in paintings, and they organized a mass bonfire at the things. We only have time for a few examples of this, but there are tons more, and the list of fires it caused without ever being harmed really is kind of incredible.
Yeah, Peter Hall, the fireman's brother, bought a copy to prove the story was bullshit, and sure enough, his house burned down. They never found the cause, but once again, the painting wasn't damaged. Sandra Krask from Kilburn said she, her sister, her mother, and a friend all had been through fires since they bought copies, and none of those copies were harmed. There was a copy of the painting on the wall of the Perillo Pizza Palace in Norfolk, and in October of 1985 it was gutted by a fire. When it was all over, the picture was pristine. On October 24th, 1985, a fire burned a family's house in South Yorkshire. The picture was undamaged, and the paintings on either side of it had been completely destroyed.
And again in October of 85, a gas explosion completely destroyed a house in Merseyside, but a pair of the paintings in the living and dining rooms were completely untouched. A few people destroyed their copies because they believed they were responsible for fires, but apparently even that didn't do it once you owned it. A man in Gloucester named Malcolm Vaughan helped his neighbor destroy a copy, and when he got home, his house was on fire, and the fire department never figured out what caused it. One fireman on the scene who said he never believed in the jinx came across a picture in a gutted room that was literally the only thing that hadn't been touched, and his response was, "That's most odd."
I'll say. So next on the list is the Busby Stoop Chair, otherwise known as the Dead Man's Chair. It was cursed in 1702 by Thomas Bugsby before his hanging for murdering his father-in-law. Busby was sitting on the chair drunk when he was arrested, and that's when he cursed it. Locals claim that during the Second World War, Canadian pilots from a nearby base used to go to Busby, and anyone who sat in it never returned from their bombing missions.
I got a feeling some people who didn't sit in it also didn't return from their bombing.
The chair stayed in the Busby Inn for centuries. In the 70s, so many fatal accidents were linked with the chair that in 1978 it was ultimately hung from the ceiling in a museum to prevent anyone from sitting on it.
There is actually a pretty interesting bit of trivia about it. So this furniture historian looked at it, and he said that certain parts of it, like the spindles, were made by a machine. But an 18th century chair was made using a pole lathe because they had these machines hadn't been invented yet. Apparently, it was all in original condition, and he figured out that it was built in around 1840, but that was 138 years after Busby's execution, which is...
How did he do it?
How do it know?
Next is the curse of James Dean's Porsche, the little bastard. The mystery begins before the car itself had been involved in any crash. On September 23, 1955, the great English actor Alec Guinness met James Dean on his first night in L.A. Dean showed him the silver Porsche and said, "It's just been delivered." But for some reason, Guinness said, "If you get in that car, you will be found dead in it by this time next week." And it happened.
Yeah, after the fatal crash, George Barris, the famous custom car builder in L.A., bought it. And he said it was involved, or parts of it that were on other race cars were involved in mysterious accidents and crashes from 56 to 1960 that caused serious injuries to spectators and a truck driver's death.
Dr. Henry, a driver who competed against Dean in the past, was killed when driving a car powered by the engine from Dean's car. Pieces of the car are still around. A family related to one of the engine's owners still has it, and the transaxle was sold at auction for $400,000.
The unlucky mummy is an ancient Egyptian artifact that isn't really a mummy. It's a painted wooden mummy board, which is the inner lid of a coffin.
It caused injuries and deaths. For example, Bertram Fletcher Robinson, the English writer and journalist, was doing research on it and became convinced it was evil and died not long after that at 36 years old. It's also been blamed for large-scale disasters. The best one is that it was being transported from the British Museum to New York on the Titanic. But that never happened.
No, it wasn't on there?
No.
Oh, damn it. Last but not least, one of the most famous cursed things of all time, the Hope Diamond.
First of all, most people think that it's the biggest diamond in the world, but actually it's only the fourth. But it is the largest blue diamond. Legend has it that its curse began when it was stolen from a Hindu temple in the 1600s by a guy named John Baptiste Tavernier. A priest cursed it, and Tavernier was torn apart by wild dogs.
Pretty good. Over the years, it became known as the most cursed diamond, except that there's no such thing as a curse, but still.
Yeah, there is.
Well, Marie Antoinette owned it at one point, and it worked out for her. It got its name in 1839 when an art and gem collector named Henry Diamond Hope bought it. They say he died an untimely death, but he didn't say what time he should have died. Not long after that, a jeweler named Wilhelm Falls bought it, and his son killed him, took the diamond, and committed suicide. That's pretty good.
The next owner was Evelyn Walsh McLean. After she bought it, her son died at 9, her daughter at 25. Jesus. After her husband left her, he went mad and died. Okay, there's a lot of dying going on here.
Famous jeweler Harry Winston got it next, and he toured around the U.S. with it, but he didn't want to take any chances, so he donated it to the Smithsonian.
This is a celebration of our anniversary. We wanted to give people a chance to see the Hope Diamond in a way they've never seen it before.
The lure of the Hope Diamond is not simply its beauty, it's the extraordinary history that lies behind it.
And according to records, he just sent it in the U.S. mail for $2.44 postage.
That's got to be bullshit.
It's a beautiful piece of jewelry.
So obviously, no one could really afford the Hope Diamond. But would you buy the painting or the Bugsby chair? Were you afraid?
Nah, I don't really believe in this shit, except for I kind of believe in the fire paintings. I mean, it just happens so many times. You don't believe it?
Maybe there was just fire retardant on these paintings, and that's why they didn't burn.
Maybe I'm a fucking idiot.
Oh, no, a lot of people. Well, people died in fires, but the painting survived. Well,
yeah, it's bullshit. Busby's chair.
Yeah.
No.
I'd totally have them all in my house if I could.
Yeah, definitely. Would you buy one of the things and then give it to someone and tell them it was cursed?
Yeah, as a joke, I'm sure I would. It'd be funny if they took it from me or would be afraid to take it.
That's what I mean, yeah. Do you know anybody that would be like, who believes in this kind of shit?
I could probably find some religious friend that wouldn't take it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But to our audience out there, would you buy something that was cursed and give it to somebody?
Yeah, or do you have anything that you think is cursed?
Or do you want to put a curse on somebody? If you do, tell us what curse you want to put on somebody and email us at tabootreasures@evocreative.com or message us at Taboo Treasures on Instagram and the TikTok.
Thanks for listening, and as always, don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. And please hit that like button so we don't have to do a GoFundMe every time we need bail money.
From EVO, Taboo Treasures is produced by Bruce Whitkin and Jeff Levine. Executive producer Brandon Morgan. Music by the Lonely Bulls.